Seated. So first we have Raphael Corley. He is a seasoned military professional with 8 years of dedicated service. Beginning his journey as an enlisted member, he quickly rose through the ranks, transitioning to become a distinguished naval officer with a specialized focus in recon corpsman operation. We'll be talking about corpsmen a lot in their operations tonight. Raphael's expertise and courage were instrumental in numerous high-stakes missions. Throughout his illustrious career, Raphael embarked on deployments with elite units such as SEAL Team 1, SEAL Team 3, demonstrating unwavering bravery and skill under pressure. He also served with esteemed 3rd Marine Division, contributing to the success of critical operations in challenging environments. So happy to have you here tonight, Raphael. Next, we have going down Valdez Dares. Sorry, you're on the other page. He was a hospital corpsman from 1980 to 84, training at Balboa Hospital, then on to Camp Pendleton to train with Fleet Marine Force, then on to Camp Lejeune, where he would convoy up to Norfolk, Virginia, catch a ship out with the 22nd Marine Amphibious Unit, where he preformed defense exercises all over the world. He's ready to go on a moment's notice at that time, always training and waiting for the call. Thank you, Valdez. Next, we have Maya Sankey, a U.S. Navy veteran of 14 years of service. She was an electronic technician, and after 14 years of service, she became a second-class petty officer. Her first duty station was on Naval Auxiliary Landing Field, or we'll call it briefly NAF. You'll see if anyone with military experience or related to someone with military experience, there's a whole different language with many acronyms. San Clemente, and NAF was on San Clemente Island, where she served as a communication technician and performed routine preventative maintenance. While stationed there, she volunteered, mind you, already a volunteer force, and she volunteered to do individual tours. The first tour was to Iraq, doing detainee operations, where she earned a Joint Commendation Medal. And then a second tour was to Gitmo, or Guantanamo Bay, also doing detainee operations. She earned the Navy Achievement Medal, Iraq Campaign Medal with Bronze Star, and Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal. Thank you. Next, we have Dr. Tracy Hunter. Dr. Hunter is from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. She received both undergraduate and graduate degrees from Howard University and her medical degree from Mercer University School of Medicine in Georgia. She recently completed 10.5 years of military service, during which time she served in Georgia, Hawaii, Korea, and California. Dr. Hunter spent the last 3 years of her career as an 11th ACR regimental surgeon at Fort Irwin National Training Center. She was recently selected as a Utah Star Scholar, which I will go into. It's a form of academic education medical appointment, with plans to spend the next 3 years studying trauma-informed care. And lastly, and I don't know if she is online, I need to admit her. And lastly, we have Stephanie Osachoa. Are you there, Stephanie? Unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm here.
She's there. Stephanie is a proud U.S. Navy veteran where she served as hospital corpsman, providing essential medical care in dynamic environments. She transitioned from military to academic life. She is currently a pre-med student. She's one of our BPOU mentees, non-traditional, pursuing her pure passion for medicine. She continues to integrate her military experiences and medical aspirations and is an advocate for comprehensive veteran mental health initiatives. Stephanie was a platoon leader for the Mission Continues in San Diego, where she led community service projects and supported fellow veterans in reintegrating into community life. Outside of that, she loves salsa dancing, walking with her husky TJ, and cooking traditional West African meals. Thank you, Stephanie. Give us a wave. Okay, all right, great.
Thank you.
So let's get right into the questions so we can hear a little bit here from the audience. So, and just to overlay the significance of veteran support, and also beyond mental health. I mean, sometimes we don't hear about veterans until something tragic occurs. Or we thank them for their service, not really knowing what incurred with their service. As we will hear tonight, it's variable. But what I want to go over is mental health disorder among U.S. veterans remain a significant concern. And here's some of the reasons why. So post-traumatic stress disorder, which was a bit of a focus of the film. According to the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, 11 to 20% of veterans who served in Operation Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom, that's Afghanistan, are 11 to 20% will experience PTSD in a given year. Depression is also prevalent among veterans. The VA estimates about 11% of veterans from both of those wars have been diagnosed with depression in a given year. And suicide rates, as this is Mental Health Awareness Month, remain higher than the gen population. According to the VA in 2020, an average of 17.6 veterans die by suicide each day. However, it is essential to note that the statistics include all veterans, not just those that served in recent conflicts. And then, of course, there are substance use disorders. And lastly, as we sometimes see in our own neighborhoods, our own streets, mental health issues often contribute to homelessness among veterans. And also, according to the VA and HUD, 7% of adults experiencing homelessness in the United States are veterans. So with that backdrop and with that little bit of statistical information, let's go through section 1 of our questions here. So I'll start off with you, Maya. So how accurately do you think the film portrays the mental health challenges faced by veterans, given your own experience? Do you have a mic? Is there a mic back there?
I'm good.
Oh, you got it?
Okay,
Alright.
I'm just gonna be brutally honest. This video,
Breathe up, breathe up.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. I'm just gonna be really honest and say that this video, although I'm not negating their trauma and their struggles, didn't have no representation of me at all. I watched the whole video, the whole movie, and honestly, for every one of these guys, like I said, not negating what they went through, their struggles and their trauma, there's 15 people like me where I did, like I said, I volunteered to do an IA tour and also volunteered to join the military on a whole. And yes, no, I wasn't on the convoy line. I wasn't on on convoys or I wasn't in battle, you know, throwing bombs or taking attack. I was supporting. I did my part to aid in the mission, but because I'm not, you know, with I don't look like what a GI Joe or a GI Jane. I'm not considered to be a veteran, or I'm not considered to have issues, you know. And because of that, or because of the fact that I came back and I assimilated into civilian society, or I'm maintaining, even though I have little triggers, I'm deemed able enough to basically survive. And because of that, I don't get the type of treatment that I honestly need because, oh, to the eyes of everybody else, I look normal. I look like a regular civilian, and it's totally frustrating. I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm trying not to come across as being, you know,
You're
over
not.
emotional, but it is frustrating and just watching. I'm so sorry.
You're good. You're good. Raphael, how do you feel the film portrayed the challenges faced by veterans?
The accuracy of the film is just a short piece of what actually goes on. I think the film highlights the need for mental health for sure. But I mean, it would take a movie that would be years long to kind of hit on all the targets of the PTSD symptoms that people experience that are veterans. It's also missing a piece. Well, it didn't miss the piece. It actually hit home that when a veteran has PTSD and has those symptoms, it also affects their family. So it's not just the veteran himself, it's also the family. I mean, one of the other things that it touched on was divorce. And so that's another life-changing experience that's added on to the PTSD factor of going through multiple symptoms and feelings. And so it shows a snapshot of what the reality of a person that's going through PTSD. But like you were saying, there is a level um, of issues mental health issues that aren't shown as our female counterparts experience. And so that's another layer of, how do we take care of our female counterparts that have PTSD, because the symptoms may be different or they may be similar. So there is some disparities. I feel like women aren't represented as well in the veteran community when it comes to PTSD. And usually when people think about PTSD, they think specifically wartime, but you also have MST, military sexual trauma, that is at the back door of being expressed. And I think that the VA needs to do a better job at highlighting that, along with our women that are going through their issues, because it's not just PTSD as it showed in the movie. You have a plethora of issues that affect your PTSD. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
a
there's a
lot.
number of mental health disorders.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Speaking of that, Stephanie, if you can unmute yourself, what are some other mental health disorders that you think veterans and even more so, particularly women in your experience, have struggled with?
Absolutely. And by the way, I just want to do a quick thank you to the entire panel and to you, Dr. Ferguson, for hosting this space for us to speak on these matters, especially when our sister here just expressed about the lack of representation. And so I just want to divert to the facts and then add on top of that. So the definition of a veteran, according to the US law, specifically, this is Title 38, defines any person who has served active duty, naval, air service, or who was discharged or released under conditions other than dishonorable. So that is anyone who has served during wartime or peacetime, service members of all branches of the military, in active training, full-time National Guard duty, you are a veteran. So even if you don't look like a veteran, if you served, if you fall under those definitions, you are a veteran. And what I want to do is give credence to our sister here who just expressed about not feeling represented in that manner. And to add on and answer that question, I completely agree. We have the valor of war heroes that are shown visible scars. And then we have to talk about the invisible scars, such as depression, anxiety. I wanted to bring up eating disorders, binge eating disorders. I want to bring up sleeping disorders, things that you can see a person and not visibly see that there's an issue, but there may be an issue that even though they did not come into contact with combat issues, which we still acknowledge our war heroes who have been on the front line. We also must acknowledge those who have supported the front lines and their families, and the ways those different mental health issues have manifested. Eating disorders is one that I like to speak on, is because it just touches on so many issues of the social determinants of health and the reasons why we're seeing so many gaps in healthcare and gaps in care for veterans, persons of color. And those issues manifest in different ways in diabetes, cancer, and it just continues to trickle in every facet of life to the point where disparities are so huge. Now we're trying to find ways to close those gaps. And so I'm happy to speak on that more later, but I want to give space for my other panelists to speak on.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank
And
you.
Valdez, if I could have you answer, do you feel the trauma that you might have experienced during your service is represented here by the film? And do you feel your trauma is shared by other veteran peers?
My name is Valdez Darris. I went through a lot of trauma. I'm more on the combat side with the Marines, even though I was a naval corpsman, hospital corpsman, in that I graduated from naval school, hospital corpsman school in San Diego, went to Camp Pendleton, where I became an FMF 8404, then went to Camp Lejeune and convoyed every 4 months up to Norfolk, Virginia, and we catch our ship and we go out and we train. And we were called at a moment's notice to do unthinkable things. But one thing I wanted to talk, you don't mind if I stand up, do you? Sometimes
Feel free.
I have a hard time.
I'll sit down for you, Valdez.
I have a hard time just keeping still. I mean, I talk too much. Somebody said.
There is
I
a
need-
2-minute limit on your
Oh,
response.
okay, okay,
Okay.
I'll make it quick. As Raphael admitted, we neglect MST, military sexual trauma. I was a victim of that, in that me and a friend of mine were savagely beaten, raped, and left for dead by 4 individuals. And that is something that is going to be with me for the rest of my life. I have my therapist here. If you stand up, let them see who you are. And she is with the VA, and she works with me every Tuesday. And Caleb, he's one of the people in my group. And they have brought out some feelings that I don't want to be brought out, but she says they're necessary. But the 4 years that I was in the military, it seems like something bad happened every year, in that I was raped, I was stabbed, I witnessed 2 Marines kill 2 6-year-old boys. We were sent out to pick up a Marine that was hurt. His truck exploded. We were sent out to get him, and 2 little kids came at us with dynamite vests, and they had, you know, they basically wanted to blow us up. They had the dynamite vest, they had the detonators in their hands, and the 2 Marines that I was with kept yelling, "Stop!" Now I'm trying to stabilize this guy and get him back in the cracker box, get him back in the ambulance to get him back to base. And we kept yelling, "Stop! Stop! Stop!" They kept running at us, and finally they had to engage. They had to blow him away. They had to kill him. We got this Marine back in the cracker box, got him back to the BAS, Battalion Aid Station, and let the doctors work on him. But I remember the commander brought us in to his tent, and he took the 2 Marines in first, and then I came in. But when they came out, they were crying and they were just distraught. And I'm thinking, oh, shoot, what happened? And he said to me, "Doc, you got to keep it together, because if you lose it, they're all going to lose it."
And Doc here, for people that may not know, so medics and corpsmen will often on the line will be referred to as Doc, even though there is a physician probably a little bit further behind the line.
So, you know, looking at these guys, I'm the old man on the group. I'm 22 years old.
It's quite old.
I'm the old man. These guys are 18 years old, 19 years old. And you think that we're not going to come back and not have any problems? You know, I wish we had more help. You know, when I first got out, it seems like they sent me to a chaplain. What's a chaplain gonna do? Okay, I talked to a chaplain. You can't do anything for me. Then they sent me to a medical doctor, and he wants to give me some pills. I don't want any pills to make me sleep, to wake me up, to make me so I can function better. I want to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
I want to have a conversation. And we didn't have that back then. And it wasn't until maybe 5 years ago that I went through all this stuff all this time, till about 5 years ago, when I finally went to the VA and says, "I need some help." I called the crisis line, and it's like, "I'm not doing too good. You know, I'm fine as long as I keep moving, but it's just when I stop and I think that I have problems."
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. Dr. Hunter, in what you saw of the film today, in your experiences, do you feel that any obstacles that you might have faced in seeking medical care or mental health care, as someone that's recently had to separate, how do you feel your experiences compare to what was shown here in the film?
In a number of ways. One, I often tell people that the military is just a very concentrated version of the country itself. And for me, you know, being on the medical side, I came in on the officer side right away. But what that meant for me was that very quickly I was a young Black female in a white man's world. And I paid for it. And so even though, you know, I had an important job and was often among them as leaders, the racism, the sexism that I faced, not on the battlefield, was pretty strong. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out about how my experiences are not represented in here is that not just Afghanistan and Iraq, the whole world is a war zone. The United States is a war zone. Every base in this country is a war zone. And a lot of the things that those soldiers experience on the war zone, in the war zone, I experienced at home. Dr. Ferguson mentioned that I spent some time at the National Training Center. And unfortunately, I know that the country hears a lot about, training accidents and things like that. But being the regimental surgeon, that was my job, right, to investigate those things. And so we were losing just as many soldiers, in California, as we're over in Iraq. But people separate it, they think it's different. But it's not. And our soldiers were dealing with the same things at home. And we were just as negligent in taking care of them at home as we were overseas. And so I think there's just it's hard. There's always going to be some voices that you don't hear. And we were chasing our tails about this back in 2015. And we're chasing our tails about it right now.
I think something to highlight here with at least the two recent experiences shared is that veterans don't necessarily have to face trauma from an enemy abroad. And often, sometimes it's sad that they have to face trauma and threats from within, from amongst their own ranks. To pivot a little bit, to address here a bit here in the community, for those that may have sought mental health or medical care, what do you feel that non-VA health and mental health providers, what do you want them to understand about veterans seeking care outside of the VA system? Who would like to speak to that first? Maya?
I would like to say something. What I would like for civilian healthcare professionals to understand is that, can you hear me now? Yeah. Good. Is that veterans are not what you see on the TV. Veterans are not gun tooting, busting down doors. Veterans are nurses, lab professionals, they're security guards, they're custodians, because some of them are trying to make it in, trying to survive in the civilian world. So when a veteran actually get the courage to come and talk to you, don't treat them like, like their trauma. Treat them like the person. Address them, the person. Don't address the trauma, because then that's just, they already don't want to talk about it. So you putting it first is just gonna make them go back in the shell, because like, I'm weak. I've been told so long that if I come to you with any type of mental problem, I'm considered weak. And I'm coming to you and you showing me it's like, okay, this is real. I'm weak. I'm not gonna come back, or I'm gonna tell you what I think you want to hear. Because personal story, I literally tried to go to a mental health professional, and because my trauma wasn't, I was I was getting bomb attack, or like physically showing a type of fear. It was something totally mundane. It wasn't deemed a traumatic enough for the professional. And he basically told me, is there any real problem? And I'm so needless to say, I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
So treat the person, not the trauma.
I think that's good. As someone that, Dr. Corley, as someone that's civilian now, that is a mental health specialist, how do you feel that you have been able to understand, as a veteran seeking care outside of the VA system, but also seeing others receive care outside the VA system? Please try to limit to 90 seconds to 120 seconds.
Well, I treat veterans as well, but I think it's a very short answer. When you're in the military, it's a they say a hurry up and wait. But when you're dealing with veterans, the most important thing to that I found to be successful is rapport. Rapport is the most important thing than the diagnosis of PTSD, because veterans have they have a thing with trust. And so building a rapport and building that relationship is going to pay dividends later. When you build that rapport, then they're more apt to understand that you care. If a veteran doesn't feel that you care, and if it's just, oh, tell me then it's done. The rapport is the most important thing. And then maybe rapport takes a month to build up or 2 months. And as you build that rapport, then you can work on the diagnosis and the symptoms, but you have to build a relationship first.
No. Yes, Dr. Hunter.
I think what I would want providers who serve as military members or veterans it's the same thing that I would want anybody, so just Joe Blow to understand, and that is that so much the worst part of the trauma is the part that you'll never see, that they'll never talk to you about, that will never come out in a session. So it's just there's just so much that is not understood. And the other thing too is what makes trauma so hard to deal with is that not only does society not understand what our veterans are going through, the veterans themselves don't understand. And that's the scariest part. It's worse than the trauma itself. Not understanding what you're going through is hard. And such a large part of the healing journey is psychoeducation, making sure our soldiers understand, what is PTSD, what is trauma, what is depression, what is anxiety, and it'll help them to not feel as broken that they do. The other thing I wanted to say, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I feel that way, as a family medicine doc, so psychiatrists are such a part of it. But I wanted to also point out that trauma is equally mental as it is physical. And that's what I'm trying to get some of my colleagues to understand by the work that I'm doing. So chronic pain, abdominal symptoms, GERD, autoimmune conditions. It's been shown that people who have experienced trauma have higher incidence of autoimmune conditions, metabolic conditions, diabetes, thyroid issues, obesity. All of those can be linked back to trauma. And so this thing is so much bigger than we realize.
Thank you for that. And Stephanie, I'd like to, where we can close out this section, and feel free for other to chime in. What are some common misconceptions or stereotypes about veterans that you've encountered, and how do they contribute to veterans being stigmatized?
Yeah, certainly. And I'll try and keep this succinct. I would say that it's really probably frustrating. And I think it's really time to end perpetuating that. For example, let's just say it, let's just call a spade, that, for example, Black people don't have eating disorders. Brown people don't have eating disorders. That we're all angry, and that anger is the main issue that someone should face. That there are different levels of trauma that are nuanced, that if somebody is not exposed to the person or doesn't understand the cultural competency, they just right away say they have an anger issue and don't see that this might be anxiety, this might be depression, this might be MDD. There might be so many different levels of nuance, but because there's this wall and veil of misunderstanding and the stereotype that's blocking getting to the actual issue, it will continue to keep us in the same place and not really truly get us to the help that's needed. So I would say, I would ask providers to listen and to be patient and to be understanding. And if they don't understanding, seek clarity before making quick decisions.
Okay. And one more person, if we can take an opportunity to answer a question before we go to our audience here. What do you feel are some misconceptions or stereotypes that you feel the community at large needs to get away from? Valdez?
Well, they seem to think that you come back and you can live a normal life and you're okay. And you're sitting there in the corner and you're smiling and you don't say anything, but they don't realize what's going through our heads, the feelings that's going through our heads. They don't realize that we don't want to go through parties, or if we do go to parties, we want to be able to control that situation. I'll drive because I want to leave when I want to leave. If I take my wife out to a restaurant, I have to be able to see the door. I have to be able to see what everybody's doing. I have to be able to see what everybody's doing. That's just the way it is. And it's been like that for years, year after year after year. And I wish I could control that, but I can't. I have to be able to, my wife could be sitting across from me or next to me, sitting there eating her appetizer. She's eating her buffalo wings or spinach dip or whatever, and just having a good time. And I'm sitting there watching the exit. I want to know where the exit is, and I want to see who's coming in and out of the entrance. She doesn't know this, but all this stuff is going through my mind. And I'm talking to my therapist about it, and she says, well, that's just we don't talk about that. We're gonna get past that because you got all these emotions and feelings up there in this stuck box, and we're going to talk about what's up there in that stuck box, and we're going to dive through those because you've been dealing with them for years and years and years, and we're going to hit them one at a time. So I thank God that I have a good therapist. I thank God that I have a good community. uh I was talking to Raphael earlier tonight, and it's like sometimes when I tried to tell my family what I went through, I lost some of my family. They didn't know how to talk to me. They didn't know how to speak to me. So family, I've learned over the years that family does not have to be blood, you know, and that's a
Does
good
not
thing.
have to be
I've
blood.
learned that.
It's a good message for us to segue here. So, does anyone have any questions for our panelists in relation to the film or their experiences? We'll go here with the young lady in the front row, or close to the front. Rebecca. No, you don't have to stand. Just state your name and your question.
Hello, my name is Erica. I'm a current service member, United States Air Force. I think I emailed you the other.
You possibly did.
Mhm.
I get a lot of emails.
But you responded, so I feel special. Thank
Okay,
you.
okay.
My name is Erica. I currently serve the United States Air Force. I'm coming up on 10 years of service. This event caught my eye, which I appreciate you all putting it on, because I don't work in a combat environment. I don't lead airmen who work in a combat environment on a normal basis. I work at a desk. But what I found is that a lot of airmen who don't work in combat, they got mental health issues. And it's kind of interesting for me because I don't think that it's necessarily mental health issues. I think it's just a lack of life skills because of the way that society is set up. So as a leader, that's kind of difficult for me to reconcile because you don't want to be dismissive, but you also have the perspective of looking, on the outside looking in. So I guess my question is, from your experience and your degree of expertise, how do you see it effective to be proactive in helping to mitigate some of the mental health issues that veterans face? Because to a certain degree, you can't do anything about combat trauma. Our brains aren't wired to experience stuff like that. So I'll leave that for like the big dogs. Like that's all y'all. But the things that we experience as trauma because we just don't have life skills. How does that?
Gotcha. So it seems like you're getting at some things that also may be generational.
Yeah.
It may not have been seen as trauma by, say, someone's from Valdez generation, but now you've got those that are your alphas, your younger Z's coming in. It's trauma. Yeah.
And the idea of following instructions is difficult and that causes trauma.
Well, we're not going to beat up on the young today.
So,
But your question is, so how do you feel that younger servicemen,
from the vein of being proactive and helping to mitigate some of the issues that once we do become veterans, how do you, as a leader, posture yourself to support them in that way from your perspective?
So in therapy, right, you have a lot of interventions that you can utilize. One of them is because you're saying a lot of them don't have life skills, right? So as their leader, right, I know it's probably a more challenging thing to do, but but there's mindfulness, right? There's these different things, these different tools that and that's this also, you can actually use this with veterans, but a lot of veterans and even your airmen, they don't know how to use the tools. If you give someone a tool, you have to teach them how to use those tools. So mindfulness, relationship patterns, right? And then, are they younger than you? And so there's a gap there. And then there's also culture. right? And common sense is not common sense. And then it's kind of like you meet a person who's very wealthy, right? And you're like, man, how do you have those problems? Like, that's nothing. But their problems are very real to them, right? And so maybe they have, it's a combination of them having some issues and then some insecurities, and then it may come off as them not knowing life skills, but maybe they need that push to know that, oh, you know what? Have you thought about mindfulness? Have you thought about talking to someone? So as a leader, sometimes it doesn't necessarily take, because you can give them constructive criticism, but I think approach it from a standpoint of love, you know, because a lot of our service members don't get love. And I'm not talking about physical love, but just caring, right? And so a lot of these kids are coming in, this is their first time, you know, being away from home, and it's new. So they don't have those life skills. And then that's where you come in as, you know, the big dog, or, you know, their superior, and you have to call it out. Because a lot of veterans and a lot of people that are in the military, you can call them out, and then you work with them, and they'll say, oh, you know what? I remember her because that person cared. And when I was down, I mean, I was stupid or whatever, that person actually called me out, and it made me a better person. So things that go, like behavior that goes unchecked, will get worse. But if you call attention to it, there you go.
So it seems like patience and try to use some of your frustration as teachable moments.
Right.
All right. Yes, sir.
Can I?
Oh, yes. Well, this is the deal. They are going to start giving us the red flashing light that we're going to have to go. So, okay. All right.
It sounded like there was a lot of uncertainty in your question. And I think as a leader, it's really important for you to hear this. These kids, they can have both a problem with life skills and a mental health problem. That's number one. Number two, a lot of these kids, their trauma, they don't come in with trauma from the military. They come in trying to escape trauma from outside of the military. So they're bringing a lot of stuff with them. And your job as a leader is not to judge it. Your job is not even to diagnose it. Your job is to be supportive and open, because so many people outside, when they were 5 and 6 and 7, didn't do it. And now they're running, and now you're responsible for them. And so you can't judge them.
All right. Sounds good. Sir, you had a question.
My name is Paul, and one of the things I think that the film didn't address was my oldest son was one of the people who went to Uzbekistan. And now they're saying that the radioactive waste in Uzbekistan is going to impact him and give him cancer and all that. Are there are people dealing with that kind of PSD?
So what he's saying is, it's kind of like the Agent Orange, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same similarities. What happens with the VA, if enough people come forward, then there's a spotlight on it. However, I do know that if you were exposed to any kind of those substances, there is something there in place for veterans to speak up. Because we don't know, like with Agent Orange, we had to wait until a lot of the bloomers were older to find out, hey, it affected a whole generation. So that's what's going on with that. Don't know if that answers your question.
But even today, with the Agent Orange with Vietnam, you've got the burn pits of
Right.
Afghanistan, you've got the water with Camp Lejeune. I was in Camp Lejeune, so I've got prostate cancer and all kinds of other conditions from that, going back and forth to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. So veterans are coming into the VA, they're getting screened, they're getting health care, they're speaking up, and they're getting mental health, because we don't understand why this is going on. You know, especially in my case, I was in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Now, this water had been poisonous from 1958 to 1978. How did this happen? And you know about it, but we don't know about it. You know, that's a problem. That's a problem for me. So yeah, you got a lot of mental health problems from that.
It's very true. Yes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Army Sergeant First Class Chantel Black, and I've been in going on 21 years. Oh, child, don't do that. OEF 2005, 2010. And one thing I appreciate everything that you all on the Navy, hoorah for y'all. I'm gonna get on you, sir, that you did not invite any Army people on the panel, but that's okay. I'm gonna get on you next time. Oh, okay. I thought you
And yours truly.
I know. Okay, sorry, ma'am. I thought you had said Navy as well. But yeah, so one thing that I appreciate is hearing you talking to the VA, because one thing we see is that we don't see representation on those film was 2015, so we were still at war going on for another 5 years. So now, and then Black people don't like to talk. So there could have been very possible that and I'm in public affairs, I'm a journalist, so I'm a documentarian at heart, that they could have asked Black men, women to be on a film. Nah, man, I'm good. Like we ourselves have that stigma. The second layer of stigma is even in the hood or wherever we come from, that we don't like to talk about our issues, especially when it comes to Black men. And then with Black women, it's just about now you being an angry Black woman. Now you're crying, you're complaining. So we both have that second, even outside the military on corporate side, we have that second layer. So I can see why we don't see representation, because we don't feel comfortable in showing ourselves, but we have to continue to talk to each other to be able to be vocal, to speak on that. Also in representation of being documentarians like myself. If I'm the one with the camera, then maybe someone that looks like me will be familiar to tell their story. If you are if you are a mental health specialist, I know my brothers would be more comfortable talking to you.
In fact, if I can interject, one of the things I teach other therapists and psychologists is that when you're explaining things, like if you're trying to exhibit explanation of like Black or Black women or Black men, stay away from the terms aggressive and stuff like that, because it's those words in the Black community is just like a complete, you'll lose the person right there. So I don't like to describe, like if a Black woman or Black man are expressive, if they're expressing themselves about some type of situation they're having, I stay away from those type of terms because it can be triggering. So
One
Can I
of
say
the,
one thing before everybody go? I also want to say, because there's a lot of knowledge here. However, on the we have a lot of like I said, a lot of people like me, the younger generation, ones, the millennials, the ones that came out recently, like 2020, 2018, that are physically in the trenches right now. We need, along the lines of what you're saying, we need more groups. Like I call it a transitional body, because we have buddies in the system in when you're active, but there's no transitional buddy or somebody to support while you're going out. And I think that's where disconnect is. And if we could just have, just like I would love to get your number and get to be friends. Like you said, if we have more people that was willing to talk and to be open, and that's why I decided to do this. Because like you said, I was about to say no, literally. I'm like, snitches get stitches, snitch. And so, but I'm willing to be a part of this change, because yes, we need more representation, but we need more representation in the younger generation. And if one person can step up and start saying, hey, I'm here, I'm willing to listen, I know how you feel, and I can empathize, I think it would definitely start making a bit better change.
And I just wanted to kudos to Valdez's therapist, because yes, you as a white woman, and you are helping older Black men go through him and helping go through those breakthroughs. It shows that it doesn't have to be a matching race and gender thing. If you can empathize and show compassion and understand, you can break through those walls just as much as anyone that looks like him. So I want to say thank you for.
another thing that I just want to say real quick, it only takes about 10 seconds, is June 8th, you're going to get a bunch of Black men jumping out of a plane in Nephi, Utah. And we want to bring awareness to PTSD and depression here in Utah. So we've got everybody, a great ground crew that's going to be working with us, passing out information about depression, about PTSD, and we're hoping that's going to get the ball rolling where people can come in and have a conversation, because that's what we need to do. Have that conversation, bring them in, let's talk, let's all get well.
All right, we'll have one last question here.
Hi, My name is Carol,
This is yours.
and I got the information about this event through the Facebook with the Black physicians and stuff. So thank you so much. But one thing on a positive note, so I received my master's in social work here at the University of Utah, but they changed the law, so I can't go clinical. I'm not really sure that I'm upset about that in such a way because I'm also uh, a child of a veteran, you know, my father. So I've experienced a lot of secondary trauma with some of the things that he's gone through. Thank you for your, um, you know, valuable input because now I think I have a better understanding of some of the things that my father continues to go through. I also work with youth. And so a lot of trauma there, trauma informed. I mean, I am ready, you know, to have boots on the ground, but unfortunately, because I live in the state of Utah and we have a system and rulemaking that makes it so hard to even be able to help you. I want to help you, but there's a lot of hills to climb to get there. And so I just totally appreciate being here tonight. It's amazing thing. It just gives me a better insight on how I can do my work better as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to get ready to thank our panelists here. Oh, did you have a
Do you
comment?
mind if I speak? Do you mind if I speak to her on that?
Yes, please.
Sure, I'll be very brief because I know we're closing out. I just want to say congratulations on the amazing feat that you've taken on. And I want you to open your world and not be limited to the very Western clinical way of caring for people. I'm Nigerian, West African, and in our culture, dance and movement is something that we highly value. Dance and movement, for example, is one of the ways that we deal with grief, with trauma, with all kinds of pains. And I express that to you that you do not have to be limited to the clinical ways of caring for folks. As you can see in the movies, they had different ways and different modalities of caring for people's trauma, PTSD, anxiety, and depression. So I just want to encourage you to keep going and know that the clinical approach is not the only linear way to go in your practice, and that you have support of your entire community, and to tap in here at BPOU and find a way to connect, because there's so many ways to serve the community, not just that one way. I hope that makes sense where I'm coming from.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Any final 20-second statements from our panelists? Maya, will go with you that you would like here the community to know.
I just want to say that I'm making an effort to put myself out there, and I want to connect. I mean, I want to be a part of the change. So I'm willing to do work. If you know, hey, let's link up.
Good. Valdez?
I'm always out there willing to help. I'm a photographer with the VA. I'm always doing things with the Black Physicians of Utah, the Masons, the IGBC, and I do things for free. I take pictures and document things for free. So if you have an organization that wants to do good, feel free to see me and take my card. And please come out to and watch all these Black folks jump out of these airplanes, because it's going to be a sight to see. So please come out and watch us.
And Dr. Hunter?
Uh-oh.
We actually got 3 women and 3 men. We got 3. I'm sorry, 3 women and 3 men.
Dr. Hunter?
I tell you who's not gonna be jumping.
Closings.
You're already a part of the change. You said you had a lot of hills to climb. Don't stop climbing. And to everybody, we have to be our biggest advocates, right? Like the hardest work has to come from us. So don't stop fighting. When you fight for yourself, people are gonna make you a villain when you really are a vigilante, but don't stop being a vigilante.
Thank you. Couldn't have think of stronger words. Thank you all. I want to also do the last point that I also want to thank Ohedi. So Guillermo, thank you. I want to also thank veteran student support, and that will be Chris and Mario. And lastly, we have a new branch, which this is probably our first kickoff event, Mental Wellness Alliance. It's the mental health arm of the Black Physicians of Utah, addressing mental health education, awareness, and access to care for Black and disadvantaged Utahns. So look at our website. We have pamphlets in the back. We have a list of therapists. And also, more importantly, I know many of y'all will be off. So make sure that you check out and get your walk or your run on with us. It's possible on June 13th or Juneteenth. Sorry, Juneteenth. All right. Juneteenth is recognized on June 17th, but everyone can see the flyer. All right. All right. Thank you, everyone.